Welcome to Higher Intelligence, smart takes on AI for the next generation campus. I'm JC Bonilla, EdTech executive, data scientist, and educator. Every episode, we break down what is happening at the intersection of artificial intelligence and higher education. No hype, no fear, just signal. Today, yet again, another different episode, because we're not talking about product launches or benchmarks. We're not talking about applications of agents on higher education. Actually, we're talking more about power. Who's controlling AI, either from an open source point of view or through a policy governmental point of view. Who's setting the rules and how we start thinking about it. There's two stories that have dominated the past 2 weeks, and I'll be not doing my job if I don't bring them here. So, two stories, one around open source software that went from zero to almost 250,000 GitHub starts in 6 weeks, and then became the global security crisis at the same time. Super popular, super scary. The other one has a different connotation. It's a confrontation between the United States government and one of the most AI companies in the world. Probably my favorite one today. Of course, to have this conversation, I need to bring in big guns. My big guns today are two important guests who are at the intersection of both the state of the art, the policy, the enterprise, the consumer, the works. So, my first guest today, Doug Smith. He's the head of AI Ops specifically at Element 451. So I spent a lot of time with Doug on my 9 to 5. As you know, at Element 451, we're pushing an AI native solution externally, a product, but also internally. And Doug is the person responsible for making sure that AI doesn't just exist on the product, but it's covering our workflows, how we think about people, how we onboard people, how we do workflows, the works. I'm also joined by James Gress, North America's AI lead at Accenture. He's also a director in an incredible portfolio there. James sits at the intersection of enterprise strategy and frontier technology, advises probably some of the most largest organizations in the world on how to navigate exactly this type of disruption. James, Doug, welcome to the show. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Doing fantastic.
Excited to be here.
Excited to be here. James, first, let's start with you. My friend, you're here because part one of you, an expert advising consultancies through Accenture and firms, and also a friend of Doug's. I understand that you do some of this commentary on weekends with some AI experts. So just a little bit of background on who you are to the people who are listening, your 9 to 5, and also your journey as an AI expert, probably coffee shops and non-9 to 5 type of things. James?
Oh, sure. Worked at Accenture for 25 years now, all in the Tampa Bay area. So long time, not quite native, but definitely long time Floridian and long time in the Tampa Bay area here. Ever since November 30th, 2022 came around, everybody became an AI expert, pretty quickly. At least the vast majority of us technician or engineers ended up kind of jumping on pretty quickly, mainly because it was all democratized pretty quick. But I would say that right now, what my main focus is delivering AI solutions for some pretty large portfolios, as well as enabling clients to be able to use AI effectively. So if you've seen in the news, a lot of organizations are cutting a lot of people and saying that we're going to be doing a lot of this stuff with AI. Well, those folks need to get trained on how to do that stuff with AI. It's not just an easy on switch that people can turn on and all of a sudden it magically happens. So we're out there making sure it happens pretty seamlessly, understanding that change management control and getting those things out there. So I kind of live on both sides. I deliver AI solutions and then I help people use AI more effectively.
Love that, which probably brings a lot of data therapy and AI therapy to your clients. Because that intersection is needed. Doug, what about you? Let's talk about your 9 to 5. What does a head of AI ops do an organization at a SaaS company?
Yeah. Well, within Element, really oriented on the internal team. So helping our internal teams on how to maximize AI, how to build AI workflows, how to build agents that support them on doing more. A lot of it's education. It's sitting down with folks, understanding what is the problem that they have. Is there a way in which AI can plug into that, solution that, develop that, and scale that with them? Or conversely, literally just sitting down, teaching them how to use all the wonderful tools that we give them access to and understand what AI tools or what AI solutions we should be bringing into our tech stack to really amplify how the team is able to do what they can do and delight and support our customers.
You got it. And again, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I hope that for our listeners, you will get familiarized with James and Doug here, as one of the things that we're going to try to experiment with is very so often there's big drops that are at the intersection of state-of-the-art technology and the so what. And I think that between these two and myself, we'll try to demystify it, break it down, and translate to all of you in higher education. At the same time, full disclosure, some of these news may be places where James, with his covenant of Accenture and the clients, may not have to go deep, or Doug, because of the things that we do with our side, we may not be able to go deep. So sometimes you may be hearing us, you know what, I may have to plead the AI fifth on this one. So as we unpack this, just keep that in mind. So let's start the show today, and let me frame it. For the last few years, right, the AI debate has been about capabilities, right? Can we do it? And how good is it? Is it better? I'm better than yours, and things of that sort. And in the debate, it's largely over, right? The models are really capable, agents are very capable, the tools are very capable. So that aspect of the debate is, in terms of capability, it's not that interesting. There's a new debate, and the new debate is about control. And this week, we saw for the first time how two very different front of open source, it starts to saying, I can control these at scale. There may be an angle that we discuss about capabilities, but there's also, we saw the example about control through the lens of governance. No amount of intimidation or punishment from the Department of War will change our position. That's one of the quotes that was actually given by the leadership at Anthropic. We're talking about Anthropic, one of the world's leading AI labs, creators of Claude, creators of Codework, and probably dominating the intersection of AI and software engineering, vibe coding, those type of things. At the same time, there's a story about OpenClaw. We mentioned it in our show about 3 weeks ago, that OpenClaw, which have been repositioned through multiple names, has been capturing imagination, use cases on agentic, and when a brilliant piece of technology spreads this fast, the governance structure of what it does and doesn't do, it starts to basically receive side effects. So today, not only I want to have the opportunity to unpack what is happening with the government and Anthropic and the side effects of this, but also what is happening with this incredible fast deployment of OpenClaw as a new player in the sector. So let's start with story number one. Doug, James, we're going to start with OpenClaw. Yep. And this is the agent that took over the internet. Doug, when did you first hear about OpenClaw?
I want to say probably about 2 months ago or so. I started seeing it on the X world and seeing it on LinkedIn, having a couple folks talking about it. And I've personally used it. It's a really cool solution, I'm not going to lie. You go to the creator's sort of backstory of how he got there. He comically actually used Claude Code to, in essence, sort of vibe code the thing into reality of having the ability of, he wanted to have Claude Code with even less guardrails. And he brought it to reality and the ability to select additional models. And I think you hit the nail on the head, which is the models have become extremely performant to be able to allow for something like this to be achieved at scale in a consistent fashion, that the users are really adopting to it very quickly. I would say the technorati, so to speak, is all buzz with OpenClaw, from the Jason Calcanis to Dave Morin, who's overseeing the OpenClaw Foundation at OpenAI, because OpenClaw, open source, apparently joining OpenAI under a foundation grouping, and that's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Now you're getting ahead of us. Love it, love it. What about you, James? When did you first hear about this OpenClaw, or the prior name that he had? Names in plural.
Yeah, it's actually gone through a couple of different names, which has led to a bunch of confusion, especially in our circles. Probably a few months ago, like Doug, I think it kind of hit hit GitHub and became quickly recognizable, thousands of stars and forks going on out there. But I don't know, Doug, you might have hit it on the nail as, you kind of referenced like it was a solution that he vibe coded. And as it got out there, like we really need to think about this whole like vibe coding thing because it is happening within organizations. And if they're starting to do this vibe coding, we can see that like OpenClaw has like a ton of vulnerabilities, especially as it got out there. And with all the hype around AI and us trying to be more productive, people out there grabbing it off the internet, installing it on their local machines and finding out that, hey, this thing can do a lot of interesting things, including like have a lot of security risks. And people are giving it just a ton of credentials, whether it's access to their local machine, giving it their email passwords, their OneDrive passwords, and like other access to a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's really kind of showcasing that I think the security industry is going to start exploding because of all this activity that is being exposed through these AI systems.
That's right. So let me give you all listeners the full arc here, because if you've been James, Doug, or myself, you heard about this for the past 2 months. So let me catch you up. November 2025, Australian developer Peter Steinberger published a side project called CloudBot for name number one. Vibe codes his way through it in a way, right? And then it gets registered. He enters the arena. But it's in late January 2026 under a new name, Molbot, that he goes viral, right? And by the time he launches this now today as OpenClaw, he has more than 250,000 GitHub stars and almost 50,000 forks. This is code to say it's a successful piece of software that it's being reused in the community. So why is it so exciting? Why is it becoming such an interesting thing? And look at how Doug and James position it. It has the good and the bad, right? Specifically through the lens of security, right? So OpenClaw is free. It's open source. To this day, the most interesting deployment that we saw in open source was being led by Meta, because it requires a lot of resources to train it. And as an open source autonomous AI agent that runs locally in your computer, it really had access to your computer. It connects to any language model. It could be Claude, GPT, or DeepSeek, you name it. And again, it uses your computer to access these models locally. It operates through messaging apps. Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, Discord. So we're talking about different deployment strategy as well. So you talk to it like a person, and it could also act like an employee. It can browse the web autonomous. It can summarize documents. It can manage your calendar. It can send and delete your emails, execute shell commands, manage files. It has over 100 pre-configured agent skills, over 100 skills, right? And users have added hundreds more through the Cloud Hub marketplace. Fascinating. The example that I've looked at that really caught my eye was its ability to create a skill on voice, right? Go into 11 Labs, create the configuration to do a booking reservation at a restaurant, I believe, and all that without the guardrails of the user. In other words, the agent figure out my objective is to get a booking, a reservation at this restaurant. The restaurant through the normal channel, Resy or Open Table was closed, creates a voice agent, calls, gets the reservation, goal achieved, next in line. So that's the possibility that we have here. So what? Why is this interesting? OpenClaw is the first mass market autonomous AI agent. It is the proof of concept that agentic AI doesn't have to come through the enterprise sales process only. James, I wonder if you actually think that's right. And can come through a GitHub link. For higher education, our listeners, institutions with thousands of employees and students who are already now downloading products here and there, this may be running around your computer labs if you allow it, right? From a personal use, you may be using it, which means IT governance, data security, and AI policy fundamental now have reached your home. So that's the context, gentlemen. Let's start unpacking this. I want to start with you, Doug. From an AI ops perspective, so you already opened it, you're already using it. Have you lost $10,000 in Bitcoin by now because someone hacked you? I don't know what's happening here.
No, I haven't. So a couple of the novel things that I see around how they approach this, which was an agent only knows what it knows, and it's all context based. And where their thought process was what would be the critical pieces of information that anyone that's onboarding an agent should be able to collect, and they go through that, and then they architect a couple other things that go through it. So the first of those, as you go into OpenClaw, and I'll be transparent, I host mine through DigitalOcean. So that's a droplet. So it's a virtual machine that I SSH into, that I have access to. And there's a benefit of that. One, it's not on my personal machine. And
a lot of the personal machine hacks are to get your own, what's it called, the small Mac computer?
A Mac Mini.
The Mac Mini, right? So a dedicated computer, right? That's the other hack. So either you go a cloud solution, what you did, Doug, or that one.
Yep, and the Mac Mini option is you download a model, you run it all locally. It's all within your computer because it doesn't touch the internet at all. But how they approach it is they have a couple things, which is basically a soul file, which is in essence the characteristics of who is this agent, how are they expected to serve and support and act, what level of commitment do they have in terms of, do they have God mode where they can go in and do any execute and just get the thing done? Sort of the example you highlighted here of like brute force it. Hey, I'm just going to create my own skill sets and I'm going to go ahead and I have the access and privileges to do this. And you gave me the credentials of 11 Labs. I'm just going to make the phone call. Yep. It solved the problem, which is fantastic to see. And I think that's what we're seeing here is that you're getting to a level of what would be the next best action, and it's taking those next best actions and bringing that forward. Other components that it does that I think are pretty neat too is the heartbeat. So the heartbeat is basically the interval by which the agent itself will wake up. So it's sort of continuously always staying on. And this is one of the unique things that happens with agents is you would create something called a cron job of like, hey, you need to run this at 1 o'clock every single day. That same sort of mentality of like, hey, this is going to wake up every 15 to 30 minutes. But based off of what we've done with the soul file, maybe the agent file and other instructions, these MD files, so the metadata files, it knows what to do. So for me, what it's doing, every morning I get up, it's giving me a breakdown of my stock equity portfolio of what's happening in those. It's built in. I've built in a couple like agent solutions where it's like looking at trail trend risk, anything that's specific around that. I've set it up with a phone line so it can handle inbound and outbound phone calls. So when people call me on those numbers, it's able to basically collect that information and give me a digest of what that looks like. A fun use case that I've done, installing a new door. I got 10 phone numbers for door installers. I gave it the task to the agent, go call these people, try to schedule them on this date between this time frame and let that go and do its thing. I had 6 people show up, 2 of which thought that I could speak Turkish and the other thought that I could speak Russian. And they were like, you're not the same
because the agent went multilingual.
Yeah, it went multilingual, which was fascinating to see.
Fascinating.
And they were also like now like completely creeped out by me, like, who are you? But it's I would say the beauty of this, and I have other friends that have very much Claude pilled, is what some people call it. They're using in their own business of like concept and ideas that were just not scalable for them. So listening to like board planning departments for 56 counties and collecting all the information and extracting the relevant information for a commercial developer, that wouldn't be scalable for him, but he has an agent that's doing that for him. So it's a really wonderful from that vantage point. But again, super concerning because the comical thing is I had a situation where it wanted to upload a skill that was a crypto skill that had a whole bunch of random stuff. And you're like, how did you end up here? And that's the interesting thing, the security vulnerability of an open source solution like this, of people utilizing like names. I know Peter, who's the creator of it, had a big issue when they switched the names of a bunch of crypto groups, basically creating the Moltbot solution that was out there. And I think the claim to fame was when Moltbook came out, which was the agents got onto a Facebook type solution and they all started having conversations and creating their own religion of what they're going to do to humans. Really, really good media pieces for sure.
Before we go into the obvious negatives, right, on security, James, passing it to you, your perspectives, but through the lens of, I have my agents already, operator, OpenAI has agents. There's been agents. Like, how do you start seeing how this is different and to its virality? Why did people like it so much? Why do you think This is so talked about. Never mind the negatives of it.
I'll be honest, it's real simple. They made it easy. They made it super simple to create the ecosystem. They created a marketplace where people can just download skills and bots, which also, of course, created some security considerations there. But at the end of the day, you don't have to be a super techno geek to get this thing up and running. And it's producing very useful results for a lot of people. So if you start combining those simple elements together, you're going to go viral. If you just look back to when OpenAI put their first ChatGPT 3 out, it was like they were just amazing on how useful the technology was at that time. And it just went completely viral. Same thing with this technology. They've made it super easy. You don't have to be super technical to get into it. Although you can see the results of what has started to happen as a result of that, because most of the consumers, they don't understand like how to look for potential bad plugins or things to download or things that it might try to download. They might just click on OK. Like I'll just do whatever you ask, and they'll just click through all the permissions and let it do whatever it is they need to do. So
and to your
I think
point,
that's where we just have to be careful in this new world.
And to your point, right? So the accessibility of open source, free, created these ecosystems that make it really interesting, right? The problem that is solved, from my point of view, it's that through the implementation of a soul file and the heartbeat type of thing, now you get this agentic play as a multi-agents, and they don't go rogue, right? So very often we experience why is my ChatGPT doing these things, right? And like kind of doesn't have an authoritative file, or you have to kind of hard code it, and you just kind of, the consistency of the output, right? It drives me crazy, right? So one of the things that you get in these soul files and these kind of configuration files is that you may put it more on guardrails, either God mode or, stay in your lane type of thing. Now, before we go into the obvious, just because it's so easy, anyone can do it, and then lo and behold, all my data is either in the dark cloud or have some incrimination in my systems. What do you guys think about this other feature of is texting to me, I'm WhatsApping throughout the day? So to your use case, Doug, when the Turkish door vendor, right? You could have been on the supermarket getting, I don't know, diapers for your daughter, and you got a message that human in the loop, the agent needed something from you, just giving you an update, and you're like, okay, fine, schedule them, right? So how do both of you think about this idea of communicating to these messaging apps? James, is that an important thing, or like, no brainer? What do you think of that?
Honestly, I don't know if I've given it a ton of thought on the different ways to communicate, but I mean, we live in a digital world, so, whichever medium people feel like comfortable in, right? Again, it all comes down to the security risk for me personally, and just making sure like whichever thing that we're utilizing is secure.
Doug, is that a feature? Is that a bug? Or like James?
Yeah, it's in essence, to a great extent, it's the feature of what you have, because now your surface area, it gets bigger in terms of what is it connected to, what is the doorway which somebody can get access to things, and at the end of the day, it's also what are the restrictions you're putting on your APIs and things of that nature that can really help you out. What I would say, what's so novel for me, and I think this is the beauty of a lot of what OpenClaw is sort of opening up, is the creative pursuit that everyone talks about of like, what is the amplification of the human, is that our creative pursuits, the ideas and concepts can be executed at much grander scale, a much faster way. It's inherently going to come with risk. And I look at that as obviously something that can be solved in time, but it's just clearly going to be a wonderful situation. And I have obviously friends that are just so elated about it, of what it has solved for them. Individuals that are like geeks about home automation. They're like, I spent so much time and effort on this one thing, and I spent 15 minutes with OpenClaw, and I automated my entire house. And I was like, this is incredible. Like I had spent, how many countless days and hours trying to do the same thing, but being able to get to that place of allowing for the creative mind to be able to execute against that. It's awesome.
Well, You both mentioned security and risks, I don't know, 17 times in the past 5 minutes. So let's get to it, right? So not only the story of OpenClaw being interesting, but within 3 weeks of OpenClaw going viral, it became a multi-vector security crisis. And it seems that it has 3 layers. I'm really going to need your help unpacking this. Security, cybersecurity, not my forte. So layer number 1, the vulnerability, a critical remote code execution flow. Ready for this? CVE 2026-25253 immediately claw jacked. It's discovered and disclosed. What does that mean? I think a mechanism malicious website could hijack a user's local OpenClaw agent via WebSocket. Not the server, not a cloud API. Actually, the agent running in your computer. A website you visited could take control over your API agent and give it instructions. Meaning, your browser went haywire, right? Your agent went haywire, maybe. And that means that browsing the web with OpenClaw running in an attacked surface. Layer 2, the marketplace. James, you brought that up as a nice, interesting feature. Hundreds of skills. Love it. Great go-to-market strategy. So CloudHub, OpenClaw's agent skill marketplace, was found to contain 800 or more malicious skills. I wonder what a malicious skills would be. Nearly 20% of the entire registry. 20% was malicious in terms of skills. The primary payload, credential stealing malware. Oh my gosh, now I know it's so bad, right? It was actually sending your passwords somewhere else. An Atomic Mac OS stealer in particular. Using installing third-party skills, the feature that made OpenClaw so powerful, we're actually handling malicious data and malicious functionality everywhere. And layer number 3, and then I'll let you guys riff off of after this, the enterprise problem. I wonder what you think about this, James. Bitdefender's telemetry confirmed OpenClaw's deployment on corporate endpoints. Wow, this is big, guys. Running with elevated system privileges as Shadow AI. Wow. The same profile as Shadow AI IT, but with an agent, AI agent in this case, that executed commands, managed files, and sent emails on behalf of the employees. Gartner characterized OpenClaw as insecure by default. CrowdStrike, Microsoft Security, and many others have published dedicated threads and advised people to stay away from it. Half of these I don't understand. I'm just kind of reading, as you can tell. So I'm going to go with you, James, right? James, make sense of this. So we spoke about it. It's a problem. There's different 3 layers. One is how it was creeping into the corporate layer. The other one is through the lens of the marketplace and how natively there were skills that are malicious. And then the third one, which we just discussed, because of the setup, your computer was actually doing things that we didn't expect it to do. So, James, make sense of this for us.
Yeah, that's that's why I'm not advising any of our corporate folks to even put this in there.
That's smart. That's smart, James.
Honestly, even if I do it myself, I tried to go out and get a Mac Mini, but I think they were out of stock when I went to go actually get it. So I'm kind of waiting for the M5 now. And I'll be honest, even if I get it, I'm not going to put like my Hotmail password or give it anything like substantial.
James, did you just say Hotmail password?
I'm old. I have a.
I think I don't know if you're like you can see, James. No one is judging you, but you just basically gave up your ear with Hotmail password, my friend.
I do have Google passwords, and I have a whole bunch of other stuff.
I'm sorry.
Although I did go grab them when I could actually use my real name as my email addresses. So having some age behind you does have some advantages. But, being careful of like really trusting any of these things, right? Even the ChatGPT has an agent mode that you could give it a credit card and say, hey, go book me some stuff. Like, I don't do that either. Like, I'm not ready to give these agents my credit card or anything like substantial because of like, I don't think we figured it all out yet. And Shadow IT, from a corporate sense is real. This is why I think that organizations need to have a good AI strategy to make sure that they are enabling their folks to be able to utilize a lot of these services in a controlled environment. Because if you don't give them those controls, or if you don't give them those avenues, you do run a higher risk of having shadow IT or shadow AI in this particular case in these instances, whether you're trying to leak things out through, ChatGPT, or someone in the IT department comes in and puts a server out there and hooks up OpenClaw to it just to see what it can do, and starts raking havoc across your entire enterprise. So, I mean, it's things that are real. And obviously you cited all the things on the news about it, and it's happening. So, we need to have a high focus on AI right now. And from an organization's perspective, I highly recommend that they give their folks these avenues, as safer avenues, where they can actually monitor and observe it a lot better.
Doug, you probably are comfortable, I don't know, giving AI your daughter's social security number. I'm not joking, but I think you're in a different spectrum.
Yeah, the interesting aspect, that's where I'm pretty hard and fast on what I will not do. Like, set up its own email address, set up its own telephone number. Like, this part of separation of myself and the agent, very much there. And there's something very, very important about that importance is you'll end up in a situation that information that you had no idea or intended for it to be consumed could be consumed. A hypothetical situation is in your personal email. You may or may not have a photo of a passport of your ID or some other important information. It's like, hey, I remember you asked me to do something 3 months ago. I know what XYZ number is. I'll go ahead and use that and sign up for this thing. Or nefariously, somebody gains access to it and it's asked, hey, have you ever got XYZ, my passport, whatever it is, number? And sure, nefariously is able to handle those information. So it's a huge concern. And I say this on the enterprise side of things, where and what's happening there, and what people need to realize is that the privileges that you have within your organization, that agent, OpenClaw, has those same privileges. It can do anything that you can do when it's on your computer, and it has the capability of doing that. So if you're the CIO, CTO, CFO, etc., it has, in essence, carte blanche to be able to run through and see all that information. And what inherently it's doing is creating a much more important threat vector that folks weren't familiar with. I think ultimately what we'll see more and more of, and we'll see how hardened OpenClaw itself becomes in time, is solving for the prompt injection situations, on how the agents are operating, to see how that all gets done. And now I think the natural stance of anyone that's in IT is no. To be transparent, I think anyone that's been in IT for a prolonged period of time are very analog people for a reason. And the rationale of that is it can't be harmed by it as much.
So like you pulled up an interesting thing as you were starting to describe it. You're almost given your OpenClaw its own identity. So it's got its own email. It has its own, OneDrive, Google Box, or whatever it happens to be, right? You're almost treating it like, hey, you're your own entity. I'm going to give you your own credentials because I don't want you leaking any of my stuff, right? And try and kind of carve it off that particular way. And I got to tell you, a lot of organizations are starting to look at agents just in general, whether that they're in OpenClaw or not, as like their own entities that have their own like skills and permissions and those types of things. So I guess the advice there is if you start to dabble in this stuff, like try to think like that in the sense of giving it its own identity.
We should look for the most obscure emails providers, AOL, Hotmail, and like direct all our identities in a more vintage way. So, gentlemen, I actually want us to move away from this story so that, and we can always tie it back. There's a really interesting parallel of what just happened. We're talking about control in the age of AI, and this is really a bottom-up approach. Universities and our partners, if you're listening to this, these wonderful manifestations and virality and popularity, if you will, of these systems may be proliferated on your campuses, on the devices that connect to your enterprises. Know that this is happening so you can prepare for it. Because if there's a security crisis that we're talking about, whether you're using Hotmail IDs or personal identities or not, be aware that this may be happening. But I want to switch to the second control conversation, if you will, right? So now it's a control that actually will come from the government and it shapes how we think about AI. This story is actually from Anthropic versus the Pentagon. That's how it started. We're recording on March the 5th, and this story has had multiple manifestations that are even linked to some of the things that we understand, that I understand, as what happened with the ongoing war with Iran. So February 27, 2006, so last week, the United States Department of Defense designates Anthropic, an American company headquartered in San Francisco, a national security supply chain risk. This is really bad. This is when it means the government says you're banned and we should not be doing business with you. President Trump even orders all federal agencies to cease using Anthropic's technology. Anthropic has a $200 million contract with the Pentagon. This is big money, friends. And then, lo and behold, OpenAI comes in at the end of the day in grabbing that contract. But there's more nuance here, right? What we've come to know and realize, right, is that the Pentagon wanted Claude available, in their words, right, for all lawful purposes without restriction. We know that Anthropic, as a spin-off from OpenAI through security and responsible AI, as a foundational core, doesn't want to have AI that harms humanity. Says no. So Anthropic refuses two specific things. They could not allow to use Claude to be used for fully autonomous weapon systems, right? And AI, this AI that makes lethal decisions without human oversight. And they would not allow Claude to be used for mass domestic surveillance of American citizens. Those were Anthropic's kind of final red lines, and they were non-negotiables. The Pentagon responded. Supply chain designation. Obviously, this is unprecedented. The use of national security frameworks against an American AI company. This is the first time that it happens. And it was very difficult to understand. Now, note the language. The Department of War, not Defense, that's deliberating that choice. Anthropic is fighting for designation in the federal court. The company also releases the full terms of their refusal policy. So, in other words, they just basically bring it to the masses. They're making this a very public situation. Complicated. And fast forward to last week, it is being talked that one of the reasons why this pressure was proliferating, that this technology was powering, guiding some of the tactics that were played out during the Iran first round of bombs that were sent out that actually took on their leader. So it's a complicated story. And the reason why I want to bring it up is that it's the first time we start seeing the interplay between government and technology at this level. At the same time, from my point of view, this is JC speaking, there's something about I need you to do what you need to do, right, for my principles, government speaking. Now, you have an organization saying, I'm sorry, but I believe that this is the right, sound, safe AI. So the way I like to kind of start this conversation is, first, what are your takes on this, Doug, James? How do you start seeing this story? What you like, what you don't like? Were you able to talk to? Because there may be, I don't know, James, if there's something that you need to withhold, I don't know. But how does this story land to you? Because for me, it was very confusing. It's unreal. And I haven't even given you the second part of the story, right? Which is how OpenAI closes the deal afterwards. But stage one, government intervenes, AI principles and identity takes place, and there's an actual governmental, big, heavy-handed deploy here. Doc, let's start with you.
Yeah. The interesting thing to me for Anthropic is that the tooling and the usage of it was obviously used both in Iran as well as Venezuela from things that have been leaked out that came around that. So it was in part utilized to execute some of the things that we saw there. Yes, the components of where AI at scale starts very much getting on the theme of Minority Report starts hitting very, very clearly. But now you're also now spinning up some of the geopolitical challenges that are happening, right? Which is the Chinese models themselves have become extremely performant, and or they are utilizing techniques that allow for them to get equal or similar performance metrics as the US models. And you're now going to sort of AI Cold War is emerging in this process. And that's, I think, one of the underpinning things that's happening here is that the Department of War, the Trump administration is saying, look, you're U.S. individuals, you need to utilize this for patriot purposes. You have to assume that the government is thinking about things in a good way. The folks at Anthropic are also looking at it as like, yeah, we don't want to be the Oppenheimer in the situation of unleashing such power to the world and bringing it to the reality. I look at this. OpenAI sees on the opportunity to gain the business. Anthropic also, I think, for their own part, utilize it for a very effective marketing technique to be able to say, hey, we'll give over $200 million of potential federal revenue for consumer-based revenue or businesses that also align with this sort of this mantra and viewpoint. So I think they're getting some goodwill out of that, and who knows if it's worth $200 million potentially.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely a very interesting topic, and maybe I'll take a little bit of a different take on it. I like the fact that we are talking about it, right? But I think the reality for especially organizations and leaders within these organizations need to think about is it's going back to that control factor, right? As we embed all these AI systems into our organization and become super reliant on them to the point that, hey, we are looking, or I am not looking to replace people, but I can tell you that the companies, right, that are out there are looking to replace people or replace these and or roles. As we start to rely on AI for all of those things, if an AI company comes along and decides to say, I don't like the way you're using our stuff, we're going to shut you off, that can be actually a big deal. And I think a lot of our organizations really need to think about what that plan is. If a company decides to exert its control at that level.
And here's the plot twist. Within hours of Anthropic's supply chain risk designation, OpenAI shows up, signs a new agreement with the Pentagon, taking over this red-lined bigger nose from Anthropic. So the government now has its own replacement provider. Case closed, right? Not so much. This signaling, James, to your point, I'm glad we're talking about it. So because it starts surfacing that the Pentagon is starting to say, you are the best in class for my prerogative, Department of War. Claude goes from, I believe it was number 100 on the App Store and becomes number one. The usability and basically the brand gain, if you will, from Claude as superior, from Anthropic as a superior organization really stood out. And the side effects have been, although that OpenAI gets the contract with the same rules that Anthropic was banned for, the government punished the principal, then signs the terms. And there's also that conflict, right? So let's close this up with, what does this all mean to you guys, right? So how, if there's so what? It's a fascinating story. I don't think it's over, but as of today, we can report it as, this is in my point of view, right? An amount of intimidation coming from the government to an AI lab, a change of tune, Anthropic coming out as the number one technology, and probably the financial gain that OpenAI has gotten. That's my takeaway. Gents, what do you think?
Yeah, my take on this, it's I think it's going to be an evolving situation. I think there's going to be more that's going to come out of this. With all these controversies, there's probably more behind the scenes situations. Some people are already throwing in, oh, well, there was a bunch of people from a prior administration that went to work at Anthropic, and that's the rationale behind what's going on. And they'll wait 4 years, that kind of situation. So we'll see how it plays out. But to me, I think one of the key themes that will probably really accelerate this will be potentially the launch of DeepSeek 4, the more disclosure of some of the situation and the sort of warming up AI race with China, China Inc., so to speak, to where they're very much in lockstep.
To agree, it's always ever changing in our. It's never a dull moment, right? I got to tell you, we've been in this, and Doug and I talk frequently enough to say it's just really, it never stops. It's as soon as you think hey, we're going to hit a wall, we're going to slow down a little bit, I feel it just keeps speeding up. And the developments from this, I think, are raising up some interesting topics that we need to have. I don't think we've had them yet. So getting it out there and getting these things figured out and understanding like how all this is going to shape out is really important thing right now.
You got it. Well, this brings us to the end. Doug, James, thank you so much for being here. This is exactly the conversation that I think we needed to have, informing our audience and our listeners of what is happening. So thank you both for bringing operational reality, passion, nerd power, as I said, right, and being strategic throughout this conversation. So thank you both. Here's where I leave you. OpenClaw and Anthropic standoffs look like two different stories, but they're not. They're both versions of the same question for me in higher education. That every institution, now you have to make an answer. What is your AI governance position? Not that your AI policy document, you kind of have like your actual position, right? What does it look like when your users start downloading really top-notch technology and you don't like it because it affects your governance position? This is an important discussion right now because the line is getting tested right now in federal courts, in labs, in GitHub repos, in computers and laptops users. Institutions need to make this decision and know how they will operate. So I hope you enjoyed the program today. I'm JC Bonilla. This is Higher Intelligence. And if today you change your mind on how you think about AI governance at your institution, share this with your CIO, share this with your general counsel or your board. This is an important conversation. And again, James, Doc, thank you so much for being here. Until next time. Thanks for listening to Higher Intelligence. This show is part of the Enrollify network, home to the largest collection of podcasts in higher education. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. You can find more podcasts, webinars, videos, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe to get new content sent directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the AI agent platform for higher education. Learn more at element451.com.